So right now we can see a carving of two birds in this stone, and this stone is called tapdo. So there are two birds here, and these birds are like phoenix-like birds, and they are called bunghwang in Korean. So Joseon people thought that when these two birds are flying across the sky of Joseon, they thought that their country will be filled with happiness, and their country will be peaceful, and there will be no wars or something like that. Yeah. And the king. So this is actually placed on the stairs that are going up to Gunjeongjeon. So the king will be usually on sedan chairs, and the king will be floating up this rock, and all the servants that are actually holding the sedan chairs will be walking on these two small stairs. Yeah. So this oddly looking pot is called Cheong, and the royal families, well, actually the king will burn incense in this pot, and when they are having ritual ceremonies for their past kings and all these kind of dead spirits. So they will stick some incense on these pots, and they're going to light it up for these kind of ritual ceremonies. So these are small rings that are attached to these pakseoks, and this ring is called a chailguri. And you might wonder why these rings are here. Well, if you try to pull it, it doesn't move at all. So these rings were actually used to install some kind of umbrella-like, parasols on these rocks. So as you can see, these rocks are only installed near the building, which means that only the higher rank officials can use these convenient services, which means that the lower class officials couldn't use these pavilions, which means that when it's raining, you have to stand on the rain and listen to the king's speech. Yeah. So right now, these are animals that are. So these are the animals that are guarding this building, and it is around this Gunjeongjeon building. So these animals are like the Chinese zodiac signs. So these animals appear in the Chinese zodiac signs, and there are 12 animals. However, there are actually 2 animals missing in this 12 animals, and these 2 animals are pig and dog. They removed these 2 animals because they thought that these 2 animals doesn't match with the supreme power of the king. They thought that these 2 animals were so dirty, and these animals couldn't really go with the royal families. So they removed these 2 animals, and only 10 are guarding this building. Yeah. So now we are looking inside the Gunjeongjeon Palace, and the first thing that we can see is this good-looking, luxurious throne, and obviously this is where the king sits, and behind this throne there is a very big painting, and this is actually a folding screen, and it is called Ilwal Obongbyeong. And as you can see, there are several natural elements that are painted here. So as you can see, there is a sun, there's a moon, there are 5 mountains, and there are pine trees, and there are water flowing under. So every single natural element represents and symbolizes something. So the sun represents the king, the moon represents the queen, and the 5 mountains represents the land of Korea, and the pine trees represents the officials of the country, and the water flowing under represents the people of Joseon. And you might wonder why these pine trees represents officials. However, when we see the characteristics of these trees, we can know why. So pine trees are evergreens, so they don't get red or they don't lose their leaves during the cold days. So like the pine trees are never getting green, never getting red or never dying, they thought that, so they wanted the officials to have their everlasting loyalty to the king. So that is why these pine trees represent officials. Yeah. Now, so this 단청, which is the painting of the palace, and this is one of my favorite colors. I think this is one of the best designs of any kind of buildings around the world. So there are actually 5 colors here, and by mixing, well not mixing, by using them, it just kind of looks very harmonized and it looks beautiful. And the 5 colors that are used here is red, yellow, green, blue, and black. And every single color represents the natural elements. Yeah. And actually, these colorings were very expensive during that day because, you know, all these kind of materials to make these paintings were very expensive, and yeah, it takes a lot of time to make it. So only the buildings inside the palace and temples were able to use these colors. Yeah. And now we can see that there are nets that are covering the building, covering the roof of this building. And you might wonder why they made this, and you can think that these are installed later when we started to restore this building. However, experts say that these nets were actually, they actually had these nets, and the reason is because they wanted to prevent birds from making nests. Because when the birds make nests here, there are going to be a lot of poops and all these kind of bad things that are going to corrupt the woods of the building. And also, when there are birds, it means that there are going to be snakes around here. So to prevent all these kind of things, they had installed these nets. Yeah. And as you can see, there are small figures that are lining up on the roof. And these small figures are called chapsuk. And all these characters are from a Chinese novel called Journey to the West. So in that novel, there is a monk, which is in the first. And there is a monkey, there is a pig, and there is a water ghost, and so on. Yeah. And all these characters are from a Chinese novel. And they thought that these small figures are going to prevent bad spirits from coming in. Yeah. Now, we're moving on to the next building. So this building is called 사정정, and this building was used as a private office for the king. So the king will be usually staying in this building for any private works, and so the king will be holding some private meetings here. Yeah. And these buildings are called 첨추전 and 만춘전, and it is next to 사정정. And these buildings were also used as private office for the king. Then you might wonder why the king needs 3 private offices. However, the king will be always switching places because he was always in danger of being assassinated by killers. So he will be always moving. And also these 2 buildings actually have a Korean traditional heating system called undu. So the king will be usually staying in these 2 buildings during the cold days, like autumn and winter. And in 사정전, he will be usually staying in there during the hot days, like spring and summer.